is working.
But I think when you get into talking about sort of dramaturgy on new plays, I think that you'll have Amy will have a lot more to offer to kind of talk about working with a playwright. But I can tell you how she goes into her processes from the outside.
Yeah, so I think I told you this in our emails because I was a little bit confused because when you say you're working particularly on the Binger Center, then Amy works I think as a dramaturg in a literary office. I'm kind of wondering like the difference between the two. Because when I checked the Yale Rep website, I can hardly see the difference because when the website talks about the center, it says it develops and nurture new plays. So yeah.
Yeah. So the website is a good resource. It's about to be updated again, but so when you're back in China, you should check back. But it is a sort of comprehensive resource of how the Binger Center works. The Binger Center was really developed when Jennifer Kiger came to Yale Rep. So Yale Rep has had a long history of doing new work, particularly developing August Wilson's work. And when James Bundy came to be the artistic director and the dean of the drama school, he brought in Jennifer, who had sort of devoted her career to developing new plays, to help him build a more robust new play program here at Yale Rep. So she's been here just over 10 years, and it's steadily grown and grown. So she's the director of all of the new play programs at Yale Rep, but she's also the associate artistic director under James. So part of the philosophy in the Binger Center is to create a kind of continuous new play program that's integrated into production. So that the development process is still driven by the artist, and the content of commissions is still driven by the artist, but it's also connected to the producing entity of the regional theater. So this is in contrast to what is a more sort of common model in the regional theater, which is that new plays get developed at one place and then they get sort of shopped around to Broadway producers or to regional theaters for them to get picked up and put into the season to do world premieres. So the idea here was to sort of integrate those two processes intentionally, and that's happening more and more with more and more theaters. That's true now. So more and more theaters are commissioning plays.
And why would you describe it as contrasting to the common models?
Why is it contrasting? Well, because there's a lot of new play development. There's a lot of organizations that do just new play development. So they just develop the new plays, and they work with playwrights, and this was sort of at the beginning of the new play movement, so that you would bring your play and work in. That's what New Dramatists does, right? They don't produce new plays. They are trying to provide a resource for playwrights to be able to work on their plays. And then the playwright has the play, and they bring it to the theater to be produced.
So the common model would be like the theater develops the new play, and they also produce the new play.
That is the model now. Yes.
That's the
model that we do. That's the model really for any play that does commissions. So if you're commissioning a playwright to write a play for your theater, different places take different approaches. You give the playwright the money, and you either have the resources and staff to be able to develop the play with the playwright,
Mhm.
or you just say, go off and write your play and deliver us a draft. So for the Binger Center, we commission the play. It starts with a conversation between Jennifer and Amy and the playwright, and then they're asked to work on the draft, come here, be in residence in New Haven, to start generating words on the page, and then they're also invited to sort of engage in having workshops in New York once they have a draft, to be able to read that play with actors. And myself and Rachel and Amy all produce those workshops in New York with professional actors, doing these sort of readings of the play, opportunity for rewrites, and then at some point the playwright decides, I have my final draft of my play, I'd like to submit it to you for consideration in the Yale Rep season.
Oh, okay. So the new model is commissioned. Am I right or wrong? Not exactly.
Yeah, well, in
Okay.
order for a play to sort of belong to a theater, it really has to be commissioned.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're coming into the process at the point where the play is already written, and you're just picking up a world premiere. And I mean, I can speculate on I think it's harder and harder to get those world premieres without having commissioned the play.
So the picking and then having the world premiere is the old model, but the new model is commissioning.
I probably shouldn't speak to what the old and new model are.
Okay.
In terms of the history of new play stuff, you could put that on your list of things that you might want to talk to Jennifer or Amy about, and they can help you have a better sense of what is kind of in the sort of environment of the new play world right now, how that world has changed. But there's also a lot of books on that subject.
Yeah, I just checked one, like Outrageous Fortune. So it's again about the information I got from the website. Probably this is my misunderstanding. So when I look at the website and it says everyone can submit a manuscript, I thought that's for consideration of season planning. But according to what you just said, it's not really. So it's more about being commissioned.
So there's two different. So the literary office oversees all. It's called the submission policy. So because we're a theater that produces new work, we accept plays from anybody, and so the policy for the literary office is online. We can see we'll accept fully written plays that are generally recommended to us by playwrights who have representation, who have agents. So they'll submit their clients' work, and those plays all get read by a system managed by the literary office, which Amy oversees and directs. That's in concert with the dramaturgy department. And then we also, people who don't have representation, who just wrote a play, submit what's called a query. A query is an 8-page dialogue sample. Again, those are also all read, and then we have the literary office makes the election of whether there's more, whether they'd like for any of those queries to query writers to submit a full-page manuscript. So that's how those are the sort of policies of the literary office, and commissions happen on we do 8 commissions a year about here, and some of them are recommissions. So we commission somebody again who we've already commissioned, and those are really at the direction of Jennifer Kiger. So and Amy Its job is to put plays in front of Jennifer and keep Jennifer sort of in the knowledge of new playwrights, in the world of new playwrights or playwrights who we haven't commissioned before, to help put those plays in front of her, and together they read them and make decisions about who they'd be interested in commissioning. And our office all kind of supports that work. And most commissions are based on relationships, so it's based on years of reading a playwright's work that's been submitted by an agency, going to readings, seeing their productions done, because it's a, tremendous act. And you're committing to a process together, the sort of process I described of you're in it together for years, working on a play, and you want to make sure that you sort of speak the same language. And for the Binger Center, the way our program is structured, we really want Yale Rec to be able to produce those plays. That's the desire, is that every commission would be produced. It doesn't always work like that.
So you say like 8 commissions a year. So like usually, I'm just wondering about the terms. So usually it's like one, like yearly, annually, or.
So we try to select 8 new playwrights every year.
And they only have like 1 year to work on their project, or they can.
No, it's a commission agreement. So you sign a contract, and it requests. I believe that the agreement requests that in 1 year that there be a draft delivered, just a draft of what it is. But it's not a strict. It's not a strict deadline. Some people have had commissions, and you receive the first payment when you sign the contract before you've written anything, and you receive the second payment when you submit your first draft. So, so the playwright really gets, so there's incentive. But lots of playwrights out there have not submitted a draft on our list of plays. I could go through the list on the website and tell you, oh, this one we produced, this one we didn't produce, but then we commissioned them again, this one. So each of those names that are on the website sort of have a different story of what the cycle of production is.
Yeah, because I know Yale produced like 5 or 6 every season, and you say they're commission like 8 playwrights a year, so they're definitely more than. Yeah. So what would happen to those that didn't get? If they get commissioned but they didn't get produced, what happened to these plays?
Yeah. So I just back up, like, what, I feel like it's not like every year at the same date we're like, so I just want to make clear, it's not like every year the same date. We're like, here's our 8 playwrights, we're going to go out and give them all contracts, and then in 1 year on this date we're going to get their things and decide whose script is going to go into the season. It's just much more, it's the philosophy of the Binger Center is to be artist driven. So it's really based on whatever the artist needs. So it's much more fluid than it being a scheduled cycle. So it happened. 1 month, any month, Jennifer could just say, I've decided I'd like to commission this person. And so she'll invite them to come to town, and we'll invite them to come stay at Madison Towers for a couple weeks to get to know all of us.
I see.
It's like, it happens, and, in any old way. Like right now, we have a playwright, Alice Twan, in residence. Are you free on Sunday?
Probably not, because my friend's visiting me, and
so we're doing a reading of her play.
I know, I got the emails.
and this is the second commission we've done with Alice, and I don't know, she's come to stay here maybe 2 or 3 times to be in residence here. We've done workshops of her work in New York. I think she is pretty on schedule. It's been almost a year since we just did her this second commission. So we'll read her play today, and she'll decide if she wants to make any, or on Sunday. She'll decide, she might have meetings with Amy, who is also a trained dramaturg, or maybe Jennifer will meet with her too, and they'll give her feedback and tell her what they think. But the way that they work is very Socratic. You know what I mean when I say that? They ask a lot of questions. It's not.
I see.
It's not. I think the play would be better if you did this. It's much more like, well, what are you looking to do in the play? What are you looking, you know, and how can I? Here's what I'm hearing, and here's what I'm seeing. And this is the impression that I had. Does that line up with the impression you want your reader to have? So it's not like, we're not going to produce your play unless you take out this one character. It's again driven by what the artist wants to see in their world. So they'll meet with her and sort of have those conversations, and then because I just knowing the way Alice works, it just depends on how the playwright works. So some playwrights. So Alice will probably submit a draft a couple weeks later, and she'll probably say, you know, this is the one, I'd like for you to consider it. And then we'll pay her her second payment, and then it will be considered, but it won't be considered till the following season, right? Because we already have 15-16. So that means that we've got until like April to read it with. So they'll bring it to Amy, and Jennifer will decide if it's ready to be brought to James, or if they, you know, feel like they have more work to do with Alice. But sometimes we commit to doing a play, and we say, well, we'll just workshop it some more, and do more dramaturgy on it, and then it will be ready for production by this time. So that's just to give you a little sense of the process, but I didn't answer your question. So what was your question again?
I felt sort of lost.
Sorry.
No, that's.
I remember your question.
Oh, okay.
Your question was, what happens to plays that we don't decide to produce?
Right.
Okay. So say, I'm just going to use the example of Alice's play, because when we commissioned her the first time, this whole process happened once before, and we decided not to produce that first play. So we decided to pass on it. So part of the agreement in the commission is that you have right of first refusal. So is that a term you've heard before? Maybe. Right of first refusal means that you are the first person who's allowed to say yes or no to the project. So when you commission, that's part of the beauty of commissioning, is that the work that they're creating belongs to you, belongs to the playwright, but you have the right to you have the first production is yours. So you are guaranteed the world premiere if you choose to have it. So in Alice's case, we read that for that play, and we decided we weren't. We just didn't have a spot for it for whatever reason. It wasn't a play that spoke to us. So we decided to pass on it, and then Alice and her agent have the right to take the play back. So now they can enter into the process that we were talking about before, where they can bring the play around to other theaters. So like that, the literary office has that agency submission policy. Now they can submit it to other literary agencies, maybe to a Broadway producer if they think it has that kind of life, and to be considered in other theaters. And those theaters get the opportunity to do a world premiere, because this would be a world premiere play. The Binger Center additionally has sort of additional funds attached to projects that we've commissioned, that basically a project that we've commissioned that we've either passed on or really that even if we've produced it once, if it's going to have a life on, the producing theater can apply for funding to the Binger Center, to Yale Rep, to Vicki Nolan and Jennifer, to say, we would like to produce this Yale Rep commission, and we are applying for funding for this amount, and to support this part. And the idea of that fund is so that money can be put towards productions that we haven't been able to see, so that Yale Rep can put more new plays out into the world. And the desires for the plays, even the world premieres that we produce here, for those to have a rich life in the American theater. So there's money to help circulate those plays.
So, although you say the whole project's very artistic driven, but I'm just wondering, like, usually how long it takes a playwright to like to get to the final draft and get produced?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends so wildly. Let's see. I tried to think of some examples for you. I mean, I can pull up our website and I can tell you the story of each of those people. You know, with Alice, like I said, that we, you know, it probably took a couple of years for the first play, and then when we passed, we decided to recommission her to try it again. So it's been a year since we recommissioned her. My guess is that we'll also put development time and funds towards this play, so we're just doing a little reading with a couple of us on Sunday, but then...
Wait, that's the second play, or
This is the second one.
Yeah, okay.
But then we'll probably also take it to New York in the fall and do some readings with some professional actors, and however much life she thinks it has. Alice is a pretty quick writer, so, and because we've worked with her once, I already sort of know that's what her process is. Let's see, like Amy Herzog, you know who that is? Amy Herzog is a pretty well-known playwright in the American theater now. Probably she's sort of at the top of the new writers list. She was a School of Drama graduate from the playwriting program in 2007. And we commissioned her maybe 2 years after she graduated, and she didn't bring a draft of her play until 6 years later.
Wow. Wow.
But then that play was called Belleville, and that play came to us. We workshopped it in New York, and at the time we went through a couple. She went through a couple drafts, and we came to the final reading, and James knew immediately that he wanted to produce it. So we decided it was like the first thing that we programmed into our season. And after that play has had a real life in the theater. It went to New York, it went to Chicago. It's still being done all over the American theater. So that's a really different example. Amy is also working on Amy also did another commission for us. Pretty much we commissioned her right after Belleville, after that season. And it took her maybe 3 or 4 years. 3 years. And then she's had 2 children. She got married, you know.
Yeah.
So it's things like this and she also has commissions from other theaters.
I see.
So it depends on the playwright, it depends on their process, it depends what else they have going on in their life. Alice Twan runs a playwriting program in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
So she's a teacher during the year, so she can really only work on her, she can come here to work on her play in the summer.
I see.
And pretty much it. Another play that we have commissioned by Karen Hertman, and that's a commission that we'll also do a workshop on this summer, and that was a commission with Longworth Theater to do a interview project. She's actually the wife of Todd London, who wrote that Outrageous Fortune book. And she she does interview projects where she interviews people and then writes a play sort of based on the story. And this was a sort of New Haven-based interview project. Right after we commissioned her, she moved to Seattle.
Oh.
So and she's a teacher too. So she can only come here during her little particular vacations, and she holds interviews and then she writes, and so everybody has a different process.
You say there are no deadlines, but roughly speaking, you commission like 8 playwrights a year, and how do you get to this number?
It's based on the amount
funding.
on the
Okay.
funding. Yeah. So it's based on the amount of the commission that each project is given. So not all commission projects sort of have the same funding behind them. In some cases, it depends on the sort of level of the artist who would be willing to accept a commission and complete it, because there isn't a lot of variation in that, but it's like $10,000 to $12,500 is the first payment. And then a musical can take years to create, and it involves new number of collaborators. So those commissions cost more money.
So it doesn't really depend on like the need of the theater, but depends on like the budget. I mean, like
It's much more about the budget. I mean,
Okay.
It's also about for example, in terms of the need of the theater, we're trying to commission projects that we want to produce, right? And the projects that we want to produce are, at this moment, if you look at our commission roster and you look at the plays that we're producing, most of the plays that we tend to have a play in the season programming that is an older play from the Western canon, generally, which means that it's written by a white man. So that already takes out one slot, right? And then sometimes there's 2 slots that are taken up by a play like that. So then that means that the other plays that we're doing are going to be new plays. And we really, it's important to James and Jennifer and to Amy and Pete that the voices that we're representing a diverse panel of voices. So a lot of our commissions tend to be to women and to people of color. So because we are looking for to put those plays into the American theater.
But maybe this is a weird question, but I'm just wondering, like, if the theater has more funding, would it commission like more playwrights?
Probably. On the other hand, we don't always commission 8 a year, and sometimes we divert the money in a different way, so that we sometimes we'll put commission money towards workshopping a project, like because it's helpful to just be able to convert money, especially on projects that cost more to develop. Like we just developed a Robert Woodruff play in New York on which was in residence at a major theater for 2 weeks. It involved singers and musicians, and it was much more like a musical, and those cost more.
I want to check my notes because I actually
Yeah?
wrote a
Good.
few questions down. So.
You know, of course, Robert Woodruff is a white man. Check that my husband's not trying to get into the building. Let's see, I'll pull up our website and see if I can share other stories.
Yeah, because you told me about like the history combination here, and I feel it's really closely related to, I think, leadership here. So could you tell me more? Because I when I wrote down my notes, I was wondering like are there any standards or anything that the theater is looking for when they decide like a commission or yeah, and I also wondering like how much weight I mean for the leadership when selecting or planning a season.
Sure. And that's a good question to ask Amy too, because Amy, as the director of the literary office, is looking to put plays in front of James and Jennifer that are consistent with their sort of vision for the work that we do here. So, but I would say also you can kind of look at this work that we, of seasons that we produce, and you try your best to think of what are these plays that are being done and what is the sort of aesthetics that's appealing here. Like one of the things that we talk a lot about is about reading. So when Amy directs dramaturgs to read plays for Yale Rep, she's looking for plays.
When you say dramaturgs, you mean like trained dramaturgs or dramaturgs here?
Dramaturgs here.
Okay.
So a lot of literary departments in the regional theater hire script readers outside of their theater, but that's because they don't have an MFA pool of dramaturgy students. But that is a job that people can, that you can do for the theater. It's like $10 a script. You can do it from, and you sort of write a report.
Just to clarify something, because we don't have dramaturgs in Taiwan or China.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so.
Yeah. You don't know what a dramaturg is?
I know. Yeah, because I took, of course, drama courses before, and I think the first dramaturg I ever heard of is Bertolt Brecht. Yeah, and anyway, I was like dramaturg is so cool, but anyway.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's just that's something we don't have in our theater. Yeah, and I've been doing some translations, in Chinese and English, and every time when I have to translate dramaturge, we don't have the equivalency. Yeah, like I always have to put that in parentheses, like, what does that mean? That means someone doing this or that, and yeah.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say yes. Not all theaters have the luxury to have the dramaturgical support that we have here, and not all theaters prioritize it the way that this theater is able to, because we're, growing new dramaturgs. And, I think it's a pretty essential role. In the new play context, it's pretty different from working in a play that is more historical. So the new play context, the dramaturg is a really sort of engaged, in both cases, they're an engaged creative partner with the playwright. When the playwright is no longer living, they have to engage in that creative relationship in a different way.
Okay. It's a little bit hard to imagine. I mean, when you say when the playwright is no longer...
So you can have a dramaturg on a Shakespeare production.
Oh, okay.
And you can have a dramaturg in the workshop in a new playroom in New York.
Okay.
And the job that person is doing in those two different plays is related, but it's not quite the same.
So, dramaturgs who work on like new plays tend to be more engaged in the creative process. Not really.
Well, they are a part of the, they're part of the story being written in a way that if you're working on a Shakespeare play, you can't be a part of the story being written anymore. You can be a part of how the story is being told.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe I should ask Amy about this question.
Which one?
The one about
how to
the
read
leadership.
for Yale Rep.
No, about like the leadership in season planning.
Yeah, so what we would call that is how to read for Yale Rep.
Oh, okay.
Right? So you're reading, if you're given a stack of plays and you're paid $10 an hour to read this stack of plays, your job is to try to find in that stack of plays what play the leadership would be interested in producing on their stage. So it's not just that you're reading for what play you like, it's that you're looking for what play is going to be right for our stage. On the other hand, there's room to say what you like, right? But a lot of, one way that Amy directs the dramaturgs when they're reading the plays that she gives them to write reports is that Yale Rep is a place that is interested in the language of the theater. So that plays that are rich in language or have a particular approach to language tend to be of interest. But again, you're sort of trying to read into the season that we've done. Strong characters, strong story. Tends to be a narrative, linear narrative. But I think that's a question you can get a great answer. You can certainly be asking me to.
And so is that a common practice here? I mean, in the American theaters, because you also say you mentioned like to hire script readers. So
that is a common practice in the American theater. Yeah, to hire script readers. But again, we don't hire ours. We just give them to the dramaturgy department. Acts as our reader pool.
So I went to all the productions last season. And I heard people would, saying like, okay, this production is going to Broadway, this kind of comment. So I'm just so I'm kind of curious that what does that mean? I mean, I don't know about like economically. It's about like would the theater who commissioned the play gets rights or money if a play goes to Broadway, and also what does that really, not really, but I don't know, like more symbolically mean to the regional or not-for-profit theater.
Uh-huh. Well, symbolically, it means a lot, given that the mission of the Binger Center is to put more new work of quality and value into the American theater. So the greater it circulates and the greater the audience that hears these stories and the more these stories can get done, the better it is for the playwright, and their career can really grow, and the better it is for Yale Rep, for our reputation as a regional theater that creates work that is of sort of both seriousness and appeal. And certainly moving to what Broadway does is provides the sort of the widest stage. It provides the access to the greatest audience. Because once a play appears on Broadway, it's open to the New York tourist crowd, which means that it's open to an international.
Yeah. And that is something that I feel like really amazing, and I'm kind of curious about, because I heard like Broadway producers now saying never open cold on Broadway.
Never what?
Open cold on Broadway. Like first you have to collaborate with nonprofit or regional theaters, and I kind of feel that's because just like you say, like on one hand it's the international tourist, but on the other hand, I mean, people who go to regional theaters are really like domestic residents, right? So the two groups are very different.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say the Yale Rep isn't trying to produce work for Broadway. We're trying to produce work for Yale Rep, and hopefully the work that we choose, if it has an appeal at another theater or at another, or for a Broadway producer. And the Broadway producer's job is to decide who they think is going to buy a ticket to that show. And we are not Broadway producers. We're regional theater producers, and we can, we're looking for work that appeals to our own artistic interests and integrity, right? Whereas the Broadway
mission of the
Yale
Yale
Rep, which is to bring work that students can also engage in, and yes, we want it to have a life outside of here. It's not, we don't consider it fully successful if it doesn't continue to have more productions. But if that production goes to Chicago, that's great. The sort of economics of Broadway transfers is probably something you'd have the most fruitful conversations with Vicki about. Vicki Nolan. But we don't do a lot of Broadway transfers. The last one we did was, and the language is pretty sticky about what counts as a transfer, what counts as the place that does the most probably Broadway transfers in the whole regional theater is the Public.
Sorry,
it's the Public Theater. So the Public Theater is the sort of main regional theater in New York City, and much of their work is designed to transfer to Broadway because the transfers, pretty nearby. Excuse me. So the last Broadway, I don't even know if it was technically called a transfer, but the last Broadway run that we did was Will Eno's Realistic Joneses, which was a couple seasons ago.
And that's by transfer to the Public?
So that went to Broadway.
Oh, okay.
So the Public Theater they tend to develop their own work. I don't think we've ever had anything transferred there. But there's lots of different sort of technicalities of the ways that various regional theaters share work, a lot. And and there's co-productions, there's co-commissions, there's transfers, there's a lot of rules about what counts as a transfer as opposed to what counts as a second production. And so we sort of do the whole, everything. And, those things get worked out as you're going. So you know that we have this play by Amy Herzog in our season next year called Mary Jane.
Oh, yeah.
That was a commission project. We commissioned that after her first commission, so this is her second commission. And we committed to producing it. But we're still working on it with her and developing the sort of final rehearsal script. And there's already another theater who wants to do the next.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, it is great, but it makes producing the first one a little bit complicated. The same thing happened last year on Indecent.
Oh.
Right? Did you see Indecent this year?
Yeah.
So Indecent, the same thing, had a lot of other theaters involved at different points during the process. So Indecent was a commission with Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
Oh.
They decided not to produce it, but we decided to produce it.
So
And
the Yale Rep didn't commission that one.
we commissioned it with them, so we did a co-commission. And then as we were producing it, there was then interest from La Jolla Playhouse to pick it up after we did our first run, and then it wasn't until sort of partway through La Jolla that the Vineyard Theater came into the project also. So they start to see the success that it has, they see what the product is, and then they decide whether or not they want to. And then they have to make there's all these rules in LORT, like if you use 50% of the cast or 50% of the same artist, then it counts as the same production, so you're required to give this credit and you have to pay this amount of money. If you decide to not use the same cast and only 2 out of 5 of the designers, then it counts as your own production, but it won't be the rolling world premiere anymore,
I think I heard Barry talking a little bit about this, but he only say it depends on the percentage.
Yes.
And I feel that's by case.
Yes.
There's no fixed rules.
Yes, that's probably true. But I don't think this is just speaking out of turn. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that the regional theater or the New York to regional theaters have really figured out. There's no this is the way that we all do it. They haven't totally figured out how to share work and how to still be sort of individualized in their choices. And I think that's a struggle.
So that I react you about the role leadership plays in season planning. That I kind of curious about what kind of role the audience plays.
In season planner?
Or do they do they have any roles in that at all?
Not at this theater. Not at this theater.
Okay.
I mean, that's not quite. I've worked at other theaters where the artistic director will poll the audience. they'll ask the audience, what shows do you want to see on our stage? But that's not something that we do. You know, not to put words in James or Jennifer's mouth, but you know, it's not that they don't have our audience in mind, and that they try pretty hard to know who our audience is. And that's, you know, partly that's the role of marketing, is to know who that audience is, to know who they're choosing plays for, and who's coming to our shows, why do they come, what things are they interested in, which things do they like, what experience do they want to have when they're at the theater. And certainly that informs what plays they choose to put into the season.
I think I got this question because I look at the mission of Yale Rap, then like one of them is to produce bold art, and so I started to think like bold art, but to whom, like to the theater professionals or to the audiences. So that's where I got this question from.
Oh, what does that word bold mean?
Yeah, like defined by the theater professionals or
I think it's looking at the audience as a whole. So if you look at who our audience is, it's some mix of people who live in New Haven and the surrounding area, Yale faculty and staff. And a huge part of our audience is the School of Drama.
That's true.
And so it's looking to produce regional quality work for School of Drama students. And Yale University undergrads but so there's no one taste that it's trying to feed necessarily. And I think bold is a difficult word to distinguish, you know, it depends on the beholder.
That's true. I think that's all of my questions, and the others I probably should ask. I mean, about like the function of literary office. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. Let me see if Amy's around. I think that she left for the day. But
before we end this, I have to tell you I really love Peerless. That's the
oh, did you? Oh, good.
That's my favorite. I really love it.
Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah. So when I look at the website, and I realized that I feel like okay, I have to.
Well, that's really nice to hear. That was a nice process. That play was picked up because there was it wasn't actually our commission, but it was picked up at a little sort of director reading, playwright reading at a little theater in New York that Jennifer went to. And she liked it and brought the script back, and we all read it and thought it was great. And
it is great.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm really glad to hear that. Let me see if Amy is here. I suspect she's left. Yeah, she's gone for the day.
Oh.
Do you want me to just send her an email and connect her with you?
Oh, that would be
Okay.
awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
How long are you here? When do you leave town?
Next week, actually.
Next week. She has a reading on Thursday. But you could do a phone call if she can't do it next week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I have any more questions, can I contact
Certainly.
you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad you had a nice time here.
It's really been inspiring.
Yeah.
I enjoy a lot of productions, and I love spending time with YSD students.
Yeah.
Because everyone's so passionate about theater, and I really love that. Because right now I'm doing my degree in the program called Creative Industries, and I think only me working at theater, and other people are more interested in like film than TV. So I don't really have that kind of support.
Right.
Yeah. So
What's the theater like?
you mean in Taiwan or
Yeah.
China?
Or where you?
I think in Taiwan, most theaters are really small, and
They're considered separate from like Peking opera style.
right,
Yeah.
they're different. I'm talking about.
So that's not considered theater.
You mean Peking opera?
Yeah.
Well, there are theaters too, but we don't talk them together. We tend to separate them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like when you talk about theater and opera, they're different. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So most of the theaters in Taiwan are really small, and we don't really have commercial theaters because it's a very small island. We don't have that kind of market size to sustain that. And some of them, sometimes they do produce, they create good works. But as I said, the market size is really small, so like they create it and probably no more life for the plays, for the productions after probably that one-time production, and most of them really depend on like government support.
Right.
Yeah. And China is very different. It's very hard to define them.
Are there playwrights that are Chinese? Are there a good number of writers who write for the theater? Well, I mean, I know what's his name, Li Ban.
Jim what? Wu?
Is his name Li Ban?
Li Ban?
My dad really likes him. What's his name? Let's see if I can find it. Yes, this guy.
Gao Shengjian.
Yeah.
He is a novelist, right?
Yeah, he's written plays too.
He's more famous.
He's more famous.
As
Yeah.
a novelist.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you asked Chinese, people from China, they would say like, the first one is Cao Yu. Yeah, but he's like the early figure theater, and right now it's Meng Jinghui. Right, like the two are really important, but besides that, I don't know. Like I already spent like 2 years in Beijing. I mean, before I came here, but the quality, I don't know. I sound like I'm criticizing them a lot, but
No, it doesn't. It doesn't seem as high as plays in English. Is that what you mean?
right.
Probably because the form isn't as supported or appreciated by the culture.
Or still new to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so not just the form, but also like the whole, the regulations or organization, because they used to be like completely government supported.
Right.
Yeah. And right now they're trying to, be more self-independent, trying to figure out their role in the market economy. Yeah. It's a totally mixed thing, because like they're having this and that, and also the government is trying to produce some highly commercial,
Uh-huh.
highly spectacular, big production.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
So,
Interesting. Well, I hope you help it grow.
I don't know. I feel like no, I'm not gonna say
You're not
anything.
gonna help it grow?
No, I'm not gonna say anything about that. Yeah.
Are you a Star Wars fan?
I'm more of a Star Trek fan.
Isn't that R2-D2 on your thing?
It's an R2D2. Let me